So it goes to, of course, it didn't go to my TV screen where I want volume. So let me change to Samsung. All right, now anything will come through the screen. All right, you shared a file in the meeting? Okay, I don't know what that means. Oh, is that? I don't know. I got to see what it is. This might be everything we talked about before I hit record. No, I'm kidding. It is class intro Zoom Saturday. Ooh, ooh. I like Ina. I like that. Did you do all that? That is so good. Thank you. Okay, good thing I hit record then. So if you go to the chat part and you hit that picture, it'll all pop up. Maybe I'll just copy and paste that to my email. I'm lazy. All right. So let's go back to the PowerPoints. Oh, I got to share the screen. Darn it. And share the screen. Okay. There we go. Let's see what the chat says. Chat. Your notes for the intro. Fantastic notes. Well done. Thank you. Okay. So now that we're recording this little bit, you'll get the chance to see when I send you the link. And so you'll see it from this point on. See what happens when you take a few weeks off? Okay. So homeostasis is what I was talking about. And the reason why I was talking about homeostasis is to lead us into what our nervous system is and what it does. And what I was saying is your brain is a very smart brain. And as far as animal species on this planet, I will always argue that the human brain is the smartest brain. There are smart brains out there in other animals. There is no doubt elephants, whales, dolphins, most mammals, to some degree, some reptiles and amphibians, and even birds. Would I say that birds have as much intelligence as humans? Would I say that dolphins have as much intelligence as humans? Or, well, you could argue that the elephant's got better memory. All right, that's fine. That's great. What are they doing with that memory? Okay. Elephants haven't destroyed this planet like humans, and it takes intelligence to destroy this planet. I mean, we're kind of destroying the planet because human beings are as close to a virus in definition as any other species on this planet. And the reason why I say that is this. The definition of a virus is a virus goes in and changes the genetic material of a cell to meet its demands, if you will, right? The virus doesn't adapt to the cell or the host or what it's living in. It changes the host to meet its needs. Anymore, whereas other animals have had to adapt to the environment, we as humans, we don't have to do that anymore. You know why? Because if we don't like the environment, we make the environment adapt to meet our needs. We change it. The proof in that is 100 years ago, what was it like on this very spot that you're sitting? If it was farmland, it might have just been trees. 1,000 years ago, I'm sure it wasn't farmland. I mean, look at the whole east coast of the United States. Okay. So in order for us to, as humans, be comfortable in surviving, rather than being uncomfortable and having to constantly adapt to the environment, right? Or not survive, and only those that could survive pass on their genetics to survive. That's kind of the theory behind evolution, right? Well, I got the ability, I got the intelligence, I have the wherewithal and the technology and the resources to make the environment adapt to what I need. That requires intelligence. Intelligence to where I can communicate verbally with you, not just non-verbally. I can teach you, you can learn from it, and then expand upon that, right? We learn how to read and write and add and calculate. We learn how to use technology. We've created tools that allow us to get far distances in a short period of time, right? I mean, 100 years ago, if somebody wanted to go to Europe, how did they get to Europe from the United States? They took a boat. Well, yeah, I don't know if there were flying airplanes 100 years ago yet to Europe. Let's see, it's 2024, 1924. Yes, there were already airplanes. But I don't know how many were flying from the United States to Europe in 1924. There were airplanes, though, because they had some airplanes in World War I, and that was 1914, 1918. You see where I'm going with this? Now, you want to go to the other side of this planet. Within 24 hours, you are there. Some intelligence took that, right? How many other species have left this planet, gone to the moon? I mean, assuming that that's not all Hollywood, right? Because we have to assume it's real. But unless you've been to the moon personally, I've actually been in Florida watching things blast off and go to space. So I know that at least it leaves the planet. It's got to go somewhere. I don't think it just goes and then disappears and then they pretend and yeah. Anyway, my point is it's intelligence. Okay. Intelligence. So regardless of what other kind of intelligence other species have, it's not the same as ours. That's because of our smart brain and the ability of our smart brain to learn and ideate and calculate. And it's just an incredible bit of information that can be stored into that smart brain of ours. At the same time, that smart brain is constantly responding to the environment. The rest of the brain is receiving information and instructing your body so that your body's in harmony. It's impressive. And what's even most impressive are little brains that are so interested in learning. That's what playing is, learning. And now with all these extra stimuli, these devices, I can't get my kids off of them. You know, you hear it all the time now as parents, like, well, we were kids, we're outside playing. Well, I mean, there are some parents that are glad that their kids are in the safety of their home on their devices, but the devices can take them to places that we never could have gone to as kids. My youngest kids will be 13 in a couple weeks. And they're doing things on their devices right now where they're making maps of countries. They're like developing. My one twin can tell you just about every single country, the 197 that are considered formal countries, and some that aren't really, that are only considered countries by other countries. Everyone. He's like, oh yeah, that's Montenegro, that's Serbia, that's this and that. I'm like, okay. And those are just a few of the European ones. He's pretty sharp. So that's a testament to the smart brain. So there's a discussion of the nervous system about intelligence, but the other real side of the nervous system is how the brain is constantly monitoring and coordinating every other body system that you have. So you can argue that the purpose of the nervous system is to control and coordinate all of the other body systems. The nervous system works to control your muscular system. It's responsible for the growth and development of your skeletal system. As long as the cardiovascular system is getting oxygen-rich blood to the brain, well, into the brain can make sure that all of the cardiovascular system is functioning to get blood elsewhere in the body. You can argue that the endocrine system and the nervous system are tightly inherent, that the respiratory system, I mean, everything feeds the nervous system, and the nervous system controls and coordinates it all. Your mood, your personality, your behavior, your learn responses, whether or not you're artistic and creative, whether or not you're abstract, whether or not you're logical or analytical, all that is a testament to your nervous system and your brain. Which, we'll say it very simply, your brain is the most important thing you've got. You are your brain. Your brain is you. So the brain falls into a category that we call the central nervous system. The central nervous system. And it works with what's called the spinal cord, also part of the central nervous system. And it's not a coincidence that the central nervous system, which is completely housed in bone, is consistent with the skeleton that we refer to as the axis, the central axis. Notice that the brain is inside of your skull. The spinal cord is inside of a canal protected by your vertebral column. The skull and the vertebral column are the central axis of bones of the 206 in your body. Remember, when we talk skeletal system, we break the skeleton down into the central axis bones called the axial skeleton and the appendage bones or the appendicular bones, which make up the arms and the legs. If you remove all of the appendages, the shoulder blade and the collarbone go with your upper extremity, the pelvis goes with your lower extremity, you're left with a skull, a spinal column, a rib cage, breastbone. That's it. Well, the brain and the spinal cord go right down the center of that, completely protected by that bone. They are the central nervous system. If it's brain or brain part, brain related, it's central nervous system. If it's spinal cord or spinal cord part, it's central nervous system. Any other nerve part or whatnot that's not brain or spinal cord is part of the peripheral nervous system. So the cranial nerves, the spinal nerves, the sensory organs, they're all, even what we call the plexuses of nerve, they're all peripheral nervous system. So you've got what's called central nervous system, abbreviated CNS, and peripheral nervous system, abbreviated PNS. And again, some textbooks in anatomy classes, one chapter is all central nervous system, another chapter is all peripheral nervous system. And what is really, I guess, different is that the nerves of the periphery are constantly, if you will, growing outward and reconnecting, staying connected to the parts of the body. But the nerves of the central nervous system, once they develop, they're really done with their maturation and development. So should they die or they should be injured or whatnot, they're not as repairable as what we see in the periphery. And it can create a complete disconnect between the brain and the body, especially if that spinal cord, which is a central highway system of information, if you injure that spinal cord to where there's no more traveling on that highway, information flow is only to and from the point of the brain in that area of spinal cord trauma, which means a person can completely lose everything from their body down as far as sensation and muscle control, what we call motor control, can be completely absent as a result of the injury to the spinal cord. And should that be an injury in the spinal cord in the neck, that person can lose the use of their arms and their legs. That's the person who's quadriplegic. I don't know why I did air quotes. Quadriplegia, all four limbs are affected by the paralysis. Paraplegia, only the lower limbs from that point of injury down. So as we get into June and the Olympics start, you'll see athletes whose bodies, especially the sports where their body is, kind of built to let them be elite in that sport or that event, right? I'm not talking about where your archery or where tools do it for. I'm talking about their body. So track and field, gymnastics, divers, swimmers, etc. Their bodies are built to allow them to be elite. And that's why they're where they are in the Olympics. But when the Olympics finish up, a week or two later, we'll see the Paralympics. And this is where we get a chance to see individuals either because they were born with a congenital anomaly or a congenital lack of development or disability, or they were injured, or whether spinal cord or loss of limb or whatever. They called the Paralympics because the initial athletes were basically paralyzed athletes that were doing a lot with the upper body. And now it's more open to all kinds of different disabilities that people have that they've overcome to become elite athletes in their field. And I find that to be very inspiring, and it's really, I think, fun to watch, like the wheelchair events where they're doing wheelchair rugby or basketball, and they're vicious. They kind of go at each other pretty well. And I just think that's really, I find it inspiring. I go out of my way to watch a lot of the Paralympic events. Don't get me wrong, I watch the Summer Olympics also just to see who's going to break that record, right? Sprinters they're built a certain way. And whereas the sprinter can run real fast for short bursts, the long distance runner can run pretty fast for long distance. I mean, to run a 26.1 or 26.2 mile marathon, right? Because that's the marathon distance, 26.2 miles, and do that under 2 hours. Yeah, the fastest marathoners right now are just under 2 hours. The course also has a, whether or not it's going to be a little bit over 2 hours or not, depending on the terrain. But yeah, some of the fastest marathon, it's been like right around the, hour and 58 minutes. That's you're trucking. You're running 6-minute miles. Is that right? Did I do that math in my head? Something like that. That's insane to me. Look, my wife ran a marathon in Chicago, and she came in at 4 hours and 5 minutes or something like that. And that was great, because the really, really seasoned marathoners that aren't professional, they're coming in between 2.5 and 3.5 hours. And for her to come in 35 minutes after the seasoned professionals, I thought was fantastic. And she didn't stop to walk at all. So, I mean, she kind of got to a slow jog, but still, that was great. I have no desire to ever run from point A to B. Okay. I'll chase a ball all day long, but I'm never going to run a marathon. I have no desire to. She did it. I'm thrilled for her for doing that. And that was back in 2005. And it was relatively warm in October. And she ran that in the heat of October, which was just unseasonably warm at that time of year. So when you see people coming around 2 hours, 2:01, these are people that get paid to run marathons. These are people that are sponsored. 2 hours. And they're always in the front starting the marathon. And when you see them running by, they're running by long stride. Just it's incredible the way their bodies have acclimated to that. But you can't just look at their bodies. You also have to look at their brains. Their brains as elite athletes have developed to allow them to understand what their body needs to do. So at any sport, at any level, whether it's a sport or whether it's a art, like any musician that's at the top of his or her, to some degree, that's a genius brain. Okay. Not just those who can sit down and compose, but those that can sit down and master an instrument to the level where they're considered elite musicians, whether it's with their voice, whether it's with their instrument, whether it's with their, their ability to score and compose music. It requires a bit of genius. I think that the best athletes in the world, yes, have physicality, but they also have a genius brain, which allows them to understand just how well, the tactical side of their sport is. So, like Michael Jordan, right? Michael Jordan, yes, was built to be an athlete, but had an incredibly genius brain that allowed him to be that much more elite compared to the others at his time. These days, you got LeBron James and some others that, tonight the NBA finals start with the Celtics and the Dallas Mavericks. And when you look at those 10 basketball players that are starting on the court, you could argue that there's a genius to that brain. Caitlin Clark for now in WNBA, after all, I mean, she, as a college professional or college athlete before she went pro, I mean, just her understanding of the game and the understanding of how her body was, at some point, that's a genius brain. We have a tendency to think genius means, oh, it's got to be Isaac Newton, it's got to be Einstein. Well, they might be genius in their academic field, but the true definition of genius is the brain that is that much more involved in how that person is successful in life. So to some degree, we all have a bit of genius in our brain, and we just have to exploit it, discover it, exploit it. So there are two words that I want to focus on, and then that's what's going to, rather than starting the central nervous system, I'll do that. And once we're done explaining that, we'll be done for the night, because this next slide, starting the central nervous system, is really the beginning of the next lecture. So the words are motor and sensory. Motor and sensory. What they mean is, I guess I didn't say that properly English-wise. What they mean are, because it's plural, sensory, meaning the ability to interpret sensations, motor, the ability to move. Those are the words that are used to encompass really the direction of the impulse that the nervous activity is traveling. All right, let me say this in English so you understand it. Your brain has the ability to issue instructions and send those instructions out to the body to make something happen. That direction of electrical impulse is away from the brain to the body, always. It's leaving the brain, it's traveling down the spinal cord, out the nerves, and to the body's muscles, joints, skin, glands, whatever. And then those instructions are carried out. We describe that as a motor instruction, or the motor direction of impulse, traveling away from the brain. What that should cause is an effect. You've heard of cause and effect? If something stimulates the body, it has to be received by the body. It has to be sent to the brain for the brain to interpret it, and then the brain to decide what needs to be done about it. So what's coming into the brain directionally is sensory. That is the cause or the affect going toward the brain, and then the brain decides what to do about it, and then the instruction going out is the effect. It's a cause and effect relationship. Or saying it this way, it's a sensory into the brain, motor out of the brain relationship. All right, so let me ask you this. Temperature-wise, are you comfortable? Okay, nobody's hot, nobody's cold. Or maybe you're hot. Let's say that you're really hot. Something's got to tell your brain it's hot. These are nerve endings in the skin that are picking up temperature. The sensation is traveling towards your brain. It's being interpreted by your brain, where your brain decides it's a little warm. Part of your brain's going to get to where, okay, what can I do about cooling off? Another part of your brain is going to be like at a subconscious level, I'm going to cool this body off. So the motor instruction that goes out to the skin tells the sweat glands to sweat. The smart brain goes, I'm going to go sit in front of that fan. I'm going to go turn on the air conditioner. I'm going to do whatever to warm up because I've learned, right, that if I do this, make this change, I should cool off. All in an effort to change what's going on because you got to a point where it's uncomfortable. And whether that's a response to pain, a response to temperature, a response to a tickle, a response to light touch, vibration, chemicals, whatever's coming into the body and being received by the body is traveling to the smart brain where you become aware of it. The truth is the majority of what's coming to your brain's ignoring. It's taking it, it's analyzing, going, not important, versus I'm analyzing it, I'm hearing it, I need to respond to it. I'm seeing it, I need to respond to it. I'm tasting it, respond to it, whatever. When it's coming into the brain, it's sensory. Some sensation is traveling toward the brain. Okay? The sensation was picked up by the nerve endings in the body. Again, whether it's touch, whether it's temperature, the nerve endings pick it up. The information then becomes an impulse that's electrical, travels through the nerves into the spinal cord or the brainstem, and then up to the brain where it becomes processed by the smart brain. Once the smart brain decides to do something about it, a motor instruction is sent out of the brain, down the spinal cord, out to the nerves, and the instruction is carried out. Whether it's a muscle moving, whether it's a gland of the skin sweating, whatever it is. If it's directionally traveling toward the brain, it's sensory. If it's traveling away from the brain, it's motor. If it's affect or affect, afferent, however you want to say it, it's sensory. If it creates an effect or there goes to an effector, it's going to change. It's motor. So you will see other words for sensory and motor. There's the afferent and the efferent, or the afferent and the efferent, if you want to say it that way. That's how I say it, just to make sure there's no confusion. The afferent versus the efferent. Sensory impulses go toward the brain. They are afferent impulses going toward the brain. Motor impulses go away from the brain. Motor impulses are efferent. So what I do when I teach it is I use an acronym. SAME, same. The word same tells us that sensory is afferent, motor is efferent. Sensory is afferent, motor is efferent. Sensory is afferent, motor is efferent. Which means that the afferent direction of impulse is always going from the body to the brain. From the periphery into the central nervous system to the brain. The brain decides what to do about it. And should there be a decision made and a response, then the out instruction goes out, motor efferent to the body to change. Again, it could be a change of position, it could be a change of whatever. As long as it's a motor instruction out to the body part will receive it and respond to the instruction. For muscles, that could be contract or relax. For skin, that could be sweat or get oily or quit sweating, not so much oil. Make the hair stand up. right? Hair stands up on skin because muscles of the skin contract. You ever seen your goosebumps? That's a motor instruction to your skin. So it's about direction of impulse. If it's sensory, something stimulated a nerve ending, whether it was in the retina of the eye so you see it, whether it was in your ear so you hear it, whether it's on your tongue so you taste it, whether it's in your nose so you smell it, whether it's on your skin so you can feel it, whether it's in your joints. Look, I can have my eyes closed and I still know where all my body parts are because my brain is getting information about the parts. My body position is being sent to my brain. So even with my eyes closed, I can still take any tip of my finger and touch the tip of my nose, no problem. My brain is constantly getting information about the position of my body. That is sensory information. As long as it's traveling toward the brain, it's sensory. As long as it's traveling away from the brain, it's motor. Everybody good with that? So when we get into our discussion of the central nervous system, it's going to be the thing receiving all that information sensory-wise or sending the information out motor-wise. Once we get to the peripheral nervous system, this is where, even though it's still sensory and motor, this is where it's really branching out to integrate to all parts of the body. So are you excited about learning about the nervous system? All right. So again, if I start the central nervous system now, we're going to run out of time before I even get anything done. Okay. So we'll be done for the night. When I see you on Saturday at 3 p.m. online, it's central nervous system discussion. So if you want to read ahead, for those that like to read ahead, read the first few pages into the central nervous system on chapter 23, where it's talking about what the central nervous system is, which is brain and spinal cord and all of its parts. And then we'll get into what the brain is and the anatomy of the brain, what the spinal cord is, some minor anatomy of the spinal cord, and the meninges that cover the brain and spinal cord, and even the cerebral spinal fluid that bathes the brain and spinal cord, all part of the central nervous system. All right. Does anybody have any questions for me? All right. Well, I promise that when I start my next lecture, the first thing I'm going to do is hit record so that the full 2 hours is recorded. All right. Any questions at home, anybody? All right, everybody, have a great night. I'll see you Saturday at 3. Look for my email with the introductory stuff and all that goodie, just so that you get used to that process. Good night, all.